Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where I talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and/or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Supernatural. So this kind of dives a little bit more into the Men of Letters. It's kind of interesting because I guess in this episode we kind of see that the Men of Letters didn't always do things the smart way. It is kind of like, oh, it's for the greater good type of thing, but obviously, they do some terrible things. I felt so bad about the situation in this episode because they beat the girl Sandy, and I'm like, oh, like I was thinking maybe on some level they could be able to fix whatever. It's like, oh, this monster that's in her or whatever that she was being fed to. It's like, I mean, because the question also was like, well, how has she been alive for like the past like 100 years or whatever? They end up, Sam and Dean end up learning from the, because I thought, because it was like, oh man, she's brought into this new age or explaining things to her and stuff like that. I thought it was going to turn into more of a thing, and maybe she gets to live the rest of her life out. I mean, we had a similar situation with Crowley's son. Wasn't it Gavin? Yeah, he kind of had a whole similar situation. Might not even been Gavin. It might have been. I don't remember. But he was kind of like let loose on kind of the world for a little while, so kind of a similar thing to that. But when I'm like, I was hoping, like, I was like, everything would have a happy ending, maybe, even if they found out there's a monster in her to be able to pull out. I was like, no, she died that day. Like, this thing was put in her. And this thing in particular is actually a god, because it seems like we are. And I love that, like, because they were like, oh, yeah, like, this whole, like, rifts into other worlds thing isn't a new thing. Apparently, because this was back in, like, the 1925 when this happened. So it's kind of like, yeah, it's kind of an old thing, probably something only the Men of Letters were kind of familiar with. But it's like, now everyone else is getting introduced to, like, oh man, there's all these different worlds and stuff like that we're kind of getting introduced to. So I think that's pretty neat. But the point I was getting across, it's just, it sucks because it's like there's this god in her, and it's just like the person we thought was Sandy this entire, it was just a god playing, possum, because it was in a weakened state because it hadn't eaten. Like the moment it's like, oh man, all those, like, because I was like, where did all those Men of Letters people go? Which also kind of catches me off guard too. I kind of forget Men of Letters are kind of like hunters. Obviously, it's a lot more like posh, I guess, in a sense. It's like hunting, but with more sophistication. I make the argument, they say, because that's always the kind of the thing, like, oh, Men of Letters are so much different from hunters, and there's that whole thing. But nevertheless, the fact that they were holding their own against Dean like that, because like, oh, you guys are actually pretty decent fighters too, so you're not just like, all textbooky, which is just, I think that's always just my interpretation. I mean, let's not forget who the British Men of Letters were. Yeah, people like Mick, wasn't it? Yeah, who was more book savvy, hadn't really had any training, but obviously you have people like Ketch who are, on even scale of like Sam and Dean, but nevertheless. So they're not, it's just kind of like a don't judge a book by its cover type of situation. It's just like like I said, you just put them as like, oh, they're the very book smart people. They don't really have any battle experience, which is totally not the case. But side note, the actress who's a part of that group of, Men of Letters, and one that was kind of like one of the two main talking ones, she looks so familiar, and I can't place her. I don't know where. I feel like I've seen her before. You know what? I wasn't paying attention. You know who she reminds me of? Maybe it's her and I don't know, but she reminds me of Tiffany Smith. If that, she's like related to a lot of DC stuff. I think she's a host and stuff like that. I'm not really sure, but I've seen her pop up and stuff. That's who she reminds me of. I don't know if that's her or not. It might have been. I don't know. I don't know if she does acting on the side too, but that's just who that reminded me of. But maybe it's not. Like, I'm just throwing it out there because, like, I was like, she looks so familiar, and it was like the closest person I can think in my head that she reminds me of is Tiffany Smith. Whether that's her or not, I don't remember. I wasn't looking at the casting. That didn't catch my eye. At least I don't think so. But nevertheless. It does set up an interesting thing, though, about the fact is that with this whole situation that the Men of Letters are still out there. Obviously, these are, like, in this particular case, they're sort of like descendants of Men of Letters, which they are, but their family was kind of kicked out of it. Like, a lot of people that were associated with what happened to Sandy were kind of kicked out, so they kind of lost their positioning. So they're not, like, true kind of heirs to, like, the whole, Men of Letters situation. Are more like pseudo heirs, but that's a whole thing. So things didn't play out the way at all. I did appreciate the twist of being like, oh yeah, she wanted Dean to be her mate. In a sense, it's like, oh yeah, I don't actually, I kind of like you, Dean, and you're not half bad to look at. And he's like, oh, you're going to make me blush. So she's basically like, hey, I'm going to let my lover from the other world that I'm from, which is kind of interesting learning about it, too, because it's like whatever's left of that world is very little, because basically they devoured all of it, which also begs the question, well, what kind of life forms existed in that world? Was it a world kind of like this? Or, because you think about that from world to world, because like the other worlds they visit, obviously, there's the one Mary and Jack are in, which is like a alternate reality to this current world, where obviously there was a world that Sam and Dean got trapped in the mid-season finale. Mid-season finale, that world didn't look like it was inhabited by humans. At least there's like potentially one human surrounded by like a crap ton of kaiju-like monsters. So there's that. So it's kind of like, I'm curious, like what kind of life forms were existing in their world. I mean, are there no other gods that could have challenged them if they're like gods? I guess they're kind of treated like gods, but they're just kind of like monsters that just devoured everything. I mean, I guess you could make that argument in this world that could make them on part. It's just a whole conversation in itself. So, but look, it's interesting because she's not dead, because her lover snatched her up, and I guess because it's like, well, you're more like food to me, so either he's going to eat his lover, which is kind of sucky, kind of be poetic justice, I guess, which is, like I said, sad. It's just because it's like you wish something would happen for Sandy, but it's like, no, Sandy died the moment that thing possessed her body. I guess it's like maybe her natural life force was like snuffed out, all that kind of made her was kind of wiped out when it entered her body. So the question is that thing still alive as Sandy in that other world, or did her lover eat her? I would assume so, because it's like, maybe it can't recognize her. It's like, it's so starved that it's like, I'll eat anything, even if they eat you. Oh, which is going to be interesting considering what's going to happen to it when its world, like, completely dies. It has nothing else and it can't reproduce. So, I don't know, just kind of interesting things to think about. I felt so bad for that one dude that went out, because obviously, he was trying to be brave to kind of impress one of the waitress at the restaurant. So that's kind of sad. But other than that, everything kind of worked out, fortunately. Like I said, I am curious to see, like, will this definitely mean we will be seeing more Men of Letters? Because it made it seem like the American branch of the Men of Letters is kind of like done. Like Sam and Dean are kind of the only like related people to Men of Letters to still kind of be established. Obviously, we know the British Men of Letters are still going on strong. Potentially, I mean, we don't know what's exactly going down with them subsequently between last season and this season. Ketch is our only connection to that. We haven't heard anything. I mean, the way Sam and Dean kind of ended things, well, the Winchesters in general ended things last season, it's like, yeah, the British Men of Letters are going to kind of stay to their side of the pond, essentially. So whether it'll always stay that way, we'll just kind of have to wait and see. But we might not hear any more whispers from them, especially if they're establishing there's still some remnants. I was trying to say rumbling and remnants. I don't know what I was trying to say. Remnants of the Men of Letters still rolling around is kind of the point I was trying to make. And on the other flip side of this, we have the whole situation with Ketch and Asmodeus. And what I found so fascinating is the fact is that Asmodeus is injecting himself with Gabriel's Archangel Grace. And I'm like, why would you do that? It's like, right, the Archangel Blade. Rather than having to worry about an angel wielding it for you, why not cut out the middleman and kind of, I guess, transfuse enough of the, for lack of a better word, angel juice into your veins so that you can trick the knife, the blade into thinking that you're an archangel, so you can wield its full power. So, I mean, wasn't that the one that Ketch ended up using to kill that demon? So, like, it can regularly kill demons. It's like a typical angel's blade, but it can't realize its full potential unless it's in the hands of an archangel. So, I guess that's what Asmodeus is kind of planning out now. So, and what also took me by surprise was the fact is he beat the living shit out of Ketch. It's kind of like, you're kind of like, not too heartbroken about that, but there was a part of me I was like, oh, that kind of sucks. He's getting a crap beat out of him, because Asmodeus is kind of like, you are mine. Like, don't ever think I run things around here, which is kind of like, we kind of see like who he favors. He definitely favors Lucifer a lot, because that's Lucifer's mentality. Well, Lucifer's mentality is like, if you don't bend to my will, well, it depends on the person. Like in this particular case, he probably would have done the same thing, beat him down to humiliate him, kind of like a Crowley situation. But other times, it's like you just be immediately to snapping and killing people. I am curious to see it, like, is that just his natural strength all on its own? Because I feel like even the other Princes of Hell weren't I mean, they were strong, but that strong? I mean, it's hard to say because I feel like it was extenuating circumstances that led to the other Princes of Hell to die. I mean, like, even Yellow Eyes. Look at Yellow Eyes. He wasn't that, like... It's kind of interesting, too. I mean, to be fair, it's a situation of building upon the continuity, but it's like, Yellow Eyes switched bodies all the time. He was never in a consistent body. It seems like these guys stayed in particular bodies. I mean, I'd assume maybe over the years things happened. I mean, them being Princes of Hell, no one could really touch them, so I guess it's kind of like they never had to worry about switching bodies like Yellow Jacket. It was just kind of not Yellow Jacket, Yellow Eyes, just because it's just kind of an extenuating circumstance. But nevertheless, he's like the only outlier because, like I said, that's just a canon being built upon itself. But it's like the other two, especially Dagon, were pretty damn tough. But it's like, I mean, it's hard to gauge how, like, where Asmodeus stands on that level. I mean, he might be strongest amongst them, but I'm kind of wondering, is that just also because of Gabriel's, like, you know, is it basically like injecting himself with steroids, hitting himself up with the whole Archangel juice? I don't know, but basically, he kind of breaks down Ketch's character, and which is kind of interesting. That he's like, "Oh, Ketch, you think you're better than us? You're a monster just like us. You want to act like you're a cold-blooded killer, but you know what I see in you? I see fear. A man who has regret, and it's like everything Ketch is doing is because he is trying to redeem himself. Because legitimately, the beast fell in love with beauty. In this particular case, that is, you know, Mary. Like, he legitimately had feelings for Mary. And for, you know, having lived as long as he, like, under the circumstances, like, basically, the British men of letters made him into the monster that he is, into the perfect killing machine. And he actually caught feelings for Mary. And yes, it was a complicated situation, but still, it is true that how he really felt about her. And I think that trying to make up, not just to anyone, I feel like out of anyone, his main reason for redemption is Mary. Because he maybe on some level thinks, if she can forgive me, maybe on some level she'll love me. Maybe I can find happiness again. I don't know. It's hard to say, like, who can, you know, maybe Ketch. You know, because maybe even Ketch kind of hard, you know, finds it hard to, like, he wants to believe he has a soul, but it's like, when it's all said and done, like, all you've ever done, like, can you be so sure, you know? Because even Asmodeus is like, oh, souls are messy things, they're confusing, so much conflict, you know? So him busting Gabriel out kind of caught me off guard, because he was like, you know, if I had your power, I thought he was going to go over there and inject himself. I mean, has that happened before? What would happen to a human who was injected with, like, celestial power like that? Has that come up in the series before? I mean, to be, like, I've always say this asterisk, it's been a long time since I've seen any of the earlier seasons. I've literally watched every season of this show one time. I've caught episodes here and there, but I don't remember that ever being an instant of anyone like any human absorbing an angel's grace. I mean, obviously there's human bodies that host an angel's grace and everything that represents an angel, but that's a different circumstance than just, like, digesting their actual grace. I am curious, like I said, I thought that's what he was going to do, but it's like, nope. Instead, he let Gabriel go, which this whole situation brings up multiple questions. How did Gabriel get to where he is? Hopefully we kind of get answers to that soon. And why did he get captured by Asmodeus? You would think, I mean, him being an archangel, you think he'd be able to take on Asmodeus. Because I feel like, because even Asmodeus, even as powerful as he is, would still bow down to even Lucifer. And I feel like Gabriel is kind of, he's not as strong as Lucifer, but I feel like he's on a similar par as Lucifer. So I feel like he'd be able to deal with Asmodeus. I mean, to be fair, there's not that many archangels running around except for him and Lucifer. Most of those kind of, like, the ones we kind of have known about. Obviously, there's a Michael situation, which Michael's still broken, messed, locked in a cage. Wasn't it Raphael? He died seasons ago. Wasn't he an archangel, or was he something else, just a high-ranking angel? I could have sworn he was an archangel. I could be wrong about that. So, like I said, there's not that many running around, so... But the fact is that he was freaked out when Ketch was pulling away. I mean, to be fair, he doesn't know Ketch. Obviously, he lightened up a little bit when he saw Sam and Dean, but I don't know. It's hard to see what's going on with Gabriel. Is there more to it than that? Like, does he know something? I mean, he hasn't spoken a word because he tries to say stuff, but obviously his mouth is stitched closed. So maybe he just thought the Ketch was going to take him off somewhere and do with what he wants to with Gabriel. It's like, oh, you're just going to use me. It's just crazy to think that that's the same Gabriel, because we know Gabriel is just being like the very loudmouth kind of like trickster that he's always pretended to be. And just seeing him like that, it's not a side of him we've ever seen before. Like, even though he's always been scared, he's always took time to kind of stand up. And it's like, wasn't the last time they saw him when Lucifer quote unquote killed him, when he sent that last message to him? That was the last time he's popped up in the series, which is kind of funny because I do know that the actor who plays him I don't know if he does a lot of directing for it. I don't know if he's a showrunner or whether he directs episodes from here and there, but I do remember seeing like some behind the scenes stuff and like bloopers and outtakes where it seems like he is part of the production of the show. So I think he's like directed like a couple episodes here and there. So it's like, it's not like he's always been too far away from Supernatural. He's been connected to it in some shape or form. But I want to say because I feel like there was some other time that he popped up and then quote unquote died, but I think that's the moment when they met up when he was pretending to be Loki with all the other Norse gods, and then Lucifer showed up, and he was afraid to stand up to his brother, but that was the time he stood up and ended up dying. Which is like, once again, how did that happen? Like, was it another trick? What have you been doing this entire time? I guess like God's kind of got his own thing going on. I guess Gabriel kind of did the same thing. It's like, I'll leave this in your hands. I'm not much of a fighter. I'm not really one to kind of stand up and fight type of thing. So I don't, ultimately we'll have to wait and see. But I just get the feeling like there's something kind of disastrous waiting around the corner with that whole Gabriel situation. But we'll wait, like I said, wait and see. So we do have all the ingredients laid out. So Dean is like, okay, so I'm gonna go. Sam's like, okay, let me get my stuff. It's like, no, you're saying what? Dude, we can't have both. Like, obviously, in the context of the story, it's like we can't have both heroes in the sense of the two people who've saved the world multiple times. We can't have both of you going. In case things go wrong in the other world, you need to stay here to hold stuff down, as well as potentially save us, me, Jack, Mom, when the time comes for it. Which is also interesting because this is all being done without Cass, and I'm curious, like, what would Cass say about this? Because I'm sure Cass would be one to go about it. I wonder, where is he? I mean, because they did collect all the ingredients. Really quickly, I'm just finding an area to squeeze it in. I do appreciate that the fact is that Dean was kind of like, ooh, jinkies. And you had Sam just looking at me. He's like, really? Are you just going to ever let that go? And Dean's kind of like, I don't know. It's like, yeah, I mean, to be fair, after your misadventures in Scooby Natural, it's kind of like, how can you let that go? Plus, Vilma made moves on you, dude. It's like, you can't let that go. Dean's going to hold that over your head forever. Especially considering he didn't get with Daphne. So that's a whole thing in itself. But nevertheless, like I said, because they've got all the ingredients, so I'm just curious, like, what Cass is up to. Because I'm also forgetting, like, to talk about the fact is, let's not forget with this whole Lucifer situation. Lucifer's got his own little army he's amassing of all the angels who will serve him, because they're like, oh yeah, like, I know what's best for you, and I also know how to make other angels, which is total BS. But hey, Lucifer does what he does, lies and manipulates, and the angels are desperate because they're literally becoming an extinct species. So they've got to do whatever they can to make this happen. So get more angels made. So that's definitely going to be interesting when those two sides clash. Asmodeus kind of buffing himself up the way he does. Obviously, you have everything with Lucifer. I mean, especially because both of them are going to want this whole situation with the Rip removed from the equation, because it's like, obviously for Asmodeus, it's like, well, if I can't use Jack, he's gonna be a problem. I'd rather him probably stay locked away in that other world and never come back, because I don't have to worry about him then. But there's also the situation that, I'm sure Asmodeus is just as worried about it as Lucifer is. It's the whole Michael situation, which we know is going to be an issue. He's going to find some shape or form to come over to this world, and he's going to be the three-way main antagonist for this season. Also, we had that whole thing, like, we haven't gone back to it since earlier in the season, was that whole thing that those things that Asmodeus were trying to release, but even like no one wanted to touch those things. Even Lucifer was like, do not mess with those things because they're too powerful and too unpredictable. I forgot what they're called. They're something with an S. Like, they haven't been brought up in a long time. I still get the feeling like they might play some part in the plot. But Dean goes off with Ketch. It's like, yeah, that's the unlikely team. And Dean's like, literally, I'm going with him because I don't care if he dies. I'm kind of actually hoping, I'm betting on it. But Sam's kind of left with Gabriel. So like I said, hopefully we'll kind of get some more information about that. Maybe next week's episode will be kind of split between the two. It's like, okay, what's happening here? Cass shows up. Maybe Sam explains everything and it's like, oh, talking to Gabriel, and then like flipping that back over to Catch, Dean, and his whole. Maybe because we know that Jack and Mary are helping the other side kind of fight. This fight. So obviously they're not going to leave until things are settled. So I'm sure Catch and Dean are going to help, which is going to be interesting considering the fact is Mary's going to be like, whoa, Catch, you're supposed to be dead. And it's like, yeah, that's going to be that whole awkward thing. I'm sure that's the main reason why he came, because it kind of feeds into my whole thing about like, well, Mary's the main one he wants to redeem himself in front of. So I think obviously that's his main reason for doing it, because he is trying to preserve something, because for him it's like, I've been a terrible person, I don't want to continue being that, so let me do something non-selfish. So like I said, very interesting developments, and I'm very interested to see what goes down in the next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.